Hey folks, it's Chris Ward. Welcome to the CBT Nugget series for ITIL Foundations. Today's nugget is going to look a little bit more deeper at some terminology, including what are processes and what are functions. Continuing on, looking at some of the terminology that are important for us in our ITIL experience as well as for the exam is going to deal with processes. Now, if you go to the service strategy book and you go over to page 20, it gives you the definition. Very important one to know. It is a structured set of activities designed to accomplish a specific objective. Notice it says a specific objective, not one that's all over the place. It's a process that takes one or more defined inputs and turns them into defined outputs. Now, in the PMI world, where I come from, in project management, there are processes, and all the processes that they have, 47 as of the recording of this ITIL Foundations exam nugget, we have, of course, inputs, tools and techniques and outputs for each one of those processes. Now, for our processes here in ITIL, very similar in that there are inputs and there are obviously going to be outputs, but each process has 4 attributes that you need to remember. The first is going to be the trigger, what starts the process. Then there are going to be activities, and I'll just put activity because there obviously could be one or there could be many. Those are the things that are going to be done in order to accomplish that final output. Now, within that, there are obviously dependencies. So there's a dependency possibly, whereas if you have one particular process, like the one we're going to use as an example, talking about doing a takeaway or to-go order, then there obviously are other processes that need to deliver their outputs in order for you to give the ultimate output to the customer, the end user, which of course requires, once you know dependencies, then there is sequence. There is going to be a sequence. So processes are going to be triggered by some occurrence. There can be an event. Maybe in your IT service desk environment, it's the phone call that comes in. A customer needs something. Or perhaps it's going to be a log report comes up that you're looking at and it says, uh-oh, we've got a lot of memory usage over here on this one host machine. Maybe we need to move over some virtual machines over to another. So there's basically going to be some sort of trigger to get things in place. But to kind of give you that overall view, because I know this is kind of introductory level for many of you, let's think about our example we're using of the Acme coffee shop. One of the processes that we've decided to come up with, or I should say Jeremy and James has come up with, is to provide a satisfying takeaway or to-go, as we call it here in the States, experience. So obviously, there are going to be other processes in a coffee shop. There are going to be things like creating the coffee drinks, cooking the food, cleaning the coffee shop, etc., etc., etc. But think of the takeaway ordering experience process itself. Now, when is it triggered? Well, that's when, in this case, these two guys walk in the door and they're going to stand up to the counter and they're going to want to order some drinks, maybe some tea or some coffee, lattes, maybe a couple cappuccinos, whatever it is. And the cashier is going to be the person that then takes action to make sure that the experience is awesome. Now, think about this. During the encounter, the cashier is going to be obtaining information that will make sure the customer needs are known and delivered upon. They need to, in order for the process to work, one of the activities is going to be information gathering, right? Okay, someone's coming in. We obviously know that they are going to order something. Let's go through the process. Now, the information could be tangible. That'll be things like the actual order that you're punching in. Some of it will be the amount of money that is going to exchange hands, or if you swipe the credit card or whatever it is. And other things that are going to literally not be tangible. The information is going to be deduced based on maybe the customer's mood or their feelings. They come in and they look really down. Well, maybe you need to offer something that's maybe a little happier. They need a little more caffeine in their drink. Or it could be an environmental thing. It's winter outside. The snow is blowing. They walk in, they're stamping the snow off their feet, and you go, hey, would you like an iced coffee? Well, okay, that's wrong, but that's not tangible. That's outside, right? So some things to think about. Another thing to think about is that each customer is unique, but they're all going to do similar things. Each one of these guys is going to come in and they're going to come up to the counter here and they're going to want to order, obviously. So there's going to be ordering the drink, there's going to be paying the money and receiving the drink. That's going to happen for every single person. But what kind of drink? What if they simply want a glass of water? you're going to see other outputs that are still in line with the original goal of the process, which is providing a good experience, but some of the things in there might be slightly different. But to deliver the excellent experience, you also have to think about the cashier as dependent, right? Dependent upon other roles and processes. There could be other roles that he or she is dependent upon, like the barista that's making the drinks, a line cook in the back making a sandwich or a pastry, the shift supervisor making sure that the cash drawer had enough money in it, and other processes besides those roles could be things like drink creation, giving refunds, and if your processes aren't defined correctly, it's going to impact the productivity of your company, which is why it's important for us to, keep that in mind. A couple of things to consider for the small Willet room, and that is number one, processes are measured, okay? You obviously are going to have performance measurement, but they could be other things like cost, quality, things like that. The second is that there are specific results. Because remember, we talk about that. It's a specific objective, so you must have a specific result. Very important. The third is that it meets expectations. Remember, when people come in to a coffee shop, as these two guys in, they're going to expect that there's going to be coffee. Why? Because it says coffee out there on the sign. So there's going to be certain expectations. And customers, by the way, in an IT environment could be internal or external to the organization. And internal customers, I find, are much more demanding than external customers. Ever notice that? Yeah, it's going to be the case in that. And then finally, there are obviously going to be different types of triggers, and that triggers change. So those are some things about processes that we need to remember. Obviously, if somebody walks up to the counter, that's one type of trigger. If somebody sits down, that's a different type of trigger. And maybe even people sitting down might want to have a takeaway experience. You wouldn't think that, but every once in a while, maybe they're tired and maybe all the stools over here are taken up, so they wouldn't want to do that. Now remember, there are not only going to be the processes themselves, but in all of these examples, you have different people that are a part of the processes, right? And so we have, of course, practitioners, we have managers, and we have owners. The practitioner is going to be obviously the cashier. That's the person that is going to be the primary person that is executing on the process. And so that would be a practitioner. Now, a process manager would be somebody like maybe, shift supervisor, somebody that kind of oversees certain things, okay? This is the person that would maybe oversee all the cashiers and some of the other process practitioners. But then ultimately, and this is important, small Willet room, there is the process owner role. This is the person that is accountable for making sure the process is fit for purpose. Process is fit for purpose. That's what the process owner role is all about. Basically, you need to make sure that the process is going according to the agreed standard or whatever is documented out there, and they are also the ones that help define. So remember, the owners help define the process itself. So that means that you're going to say, all right, I've got objective 1, objective 2, and objective 3. I've helped define it, but I need to make sure that all of those things are being met. All those objectives are being met, and that's what owners are going to do of a process. Another area in the terminology is going to be functions. Now, functions are basically taking some roles that are responsible for putting the work into a process or maybe even an activity and then grouping them together. Now, there are specific functions that you need to know for the exam, and that is going to be these particular 5. Now, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about each one of these later on in our Nugget series here, but you have the service desk function, the technical management, applications management, facilities management, and IT operations control. Now, these are all going to be functions that operate within an IT organization, right? And as part of your IT service management, these particular functions will then do certain things. Like in technical management, obviously you're going to break this down into areas like your servers, your network, your databases, maybe Active Directory would be part of that. And your application could be anything from business applications to your HR applications. Your operations control is going to deal with things like job scheduling, backup, print jobs, things like that. Facilities management, well, data centers, right? Your recovery sites, things like that. So each one of these is going to have a function. And think about it though, even though each one of these would be considered their own function, kind of isolated in their own right, all of them obviously are going to interact and sometimes are dependent upon each other. Think about this. If we're talking about our Acme coffee, there is obviously the kitchen, there is the barista where the coffee bar is, I should say the coffee bar, because the barista is actually a role or a person that's doing it. You have the cash register area, then you have the seating area, you even have the outdoors, which would be kind of a facilities area. And if we're going to provide that great takeaway experience, the coffee bar and the cashier area and even the kitchen might need to work together in order for that process to be successful. So just kind of an idea on how that works. Now, I also need to tell you a little bit about this. This is what is known as a responsibility assignment matrix, or a RAM chart is what they do. This particular one is called the RACI chart or the RACI chart, just depend on what you're talking about. Now, in the RACI model, and by the way, there are other models. There's the Paris and a couple others, but the RACI one is what you're going to see for ITIL. Okay, just bottom line, this is what's going to be on the exam. Now, each one of these letters obviously stands for a part of the roles and responsibilities when you have a process. You have the R, which is for responsible, the A for accountable, the C is for consult, and I for inform. So obviously, in this particular environment, now I went ahead and I kind of wrote over it, but we've got applications, desktops, service desk, virtual infrastructure. I just threw up a couple of processes perhaps that are in play. And you have obviously different roles. You have your IT director, you have help desk tech, you have a CTO, your chief technology officer, and you'll find that the R, the responsibility, is the person that does the work, or groups of people that do the work. And you'll notice the help desk does a lot of the work. They are the process practitioners, okay? But they report to the function or position that has an A in it, the one that is accountable for this, or accountability sometimes is what they say. This is making sure that the action actually takes place, and they probably don't do it themselves, but they have very important ownership. So if you're sitting in a small well-lit room after spending a large amount of money to answer questions on a computer screen, remember, if they're looking for the owner, or the process owner is going to be the one who is accountable for it. There is also going to be consult, which is basically giving advice or counsel on how this can work. And then inform. Inform basically, in this case, notice how the IT director only needs to be informed about the service desk operations, because perhaps that's just maybe triggers the next event. So that is purely informational, thus the I for inform. So there you go. We got a couple more terminology pieces out of the way, and in our next series of nuggets, we're going to start diving into the actual books and the actual processes of like service strategy, service design, service transition, service operations, and of course continual service improvement. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.